Hi, welcome back to Fireside Chats, where we take a less formal look at some of Fire's issues. You can tell we're less formal because of these comfy chairs we're sitting in. I'm Samantha Harris. I am Fire's Vice President of Policy Research, and I'm our host for the day. And I'm joined by our data analyst, Kelsey Naughton, and by fellow Fire attorney, Susan Kruth. And we are going to be talking about due process on campus. If you don't know exactly what that term means, we're talking about the procedural protections that students and sometimes faculty are entitled to or should be entitled to before they can be suspended or expelled from school. And this is a big issue because a lot of times students are suspended or expelled with virtually no due process whatsoever. And this is not true just in the sexual misconduct setting where we've been hearing a lot about it, but also in cases of other serious non-academic misconduct. And this is something Fire has been sounding the alarm about, the fire alarm, I guess you could say, for a long time now. And over the past year, we have come out with two reports and surveys that I think shed a lot of light on this topic. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So Kelsey is our data analyst, and she headed up a survey that we just released, which found that students overwhelmingly want due process protections on campus. And then Susan will be telling us about the report that she and I worked on last fall, which showed that schools aren't providing them. So those are sort of the big takeaways. Students want these protections. Schools aren't providing them. And that's why we're here. So Kelsey, tell us about how you designed this survey. Like, what goes into designing a survey like this?
So when we first started out looking at the survey, we wanted to look at different types of misconduct that students might allegedly be accused of on campus, and how students' attitudes toward that type of misconduct might be in a disciplinary setting. So we looked at students' attitudes toward procedural protections, toward misconduct if the misconduct was underage drinking, if the misconduct was sexual in nature, and if a student just broke a rule. And then we looked at 9 different procedural protections, students' attitudes toward them, that were outlined in the report that Susan and Sam put out last year. And we found that students overwhelmingly support each of those protections, except for in one case. And students think that it's important that they have those protections on their campuses. It was, once we got into the groove of designing the survey, it was fairly easy to write it because no other survey has asked college students before about their attitudes toward due process.
And so what were some of the most interesting findings, do you think?
So to me, one of the most interesting findings was that only 16% of students think that the primary purpose of a disciplinary proceeding is educational. The other, more than 80% of students think that the primary purpose of a disciplinary proceeding is for justice and protection on campus. So students really do feel that this is like a court of law on their campus. And so many students think that it's important. 98% of students say that that due process protections are either very important or important for them or their classmates.
And the educational point, the fact that students don't primarily see it as an educational process, is important because this is the rationale that a lot of schools use to justify offering virtually no protections, no hearing, no right to have an advisor assist in the proceedings. They'll say, well, this is not a punitive or a judicial proceeding. This is just an educational proceeding. But try telling that to someone who's retroactively losing an ROTC scholarship and suddenly owes their university $230,000 in back tuition, who's going to be expelled with permanent notation on their record that might affect their ability to get into graduate school or into a job of their choosing. So this educational rationale, we've never felt really jibes with what the actual outcomes of these proceedings are and then the severe impact they have on students' lives. And now what we're learning is it doesn't jibe with students' perceptions of these proceedings either. So now, as I said, this survey built on a report that we did last year, which found that schools really are not offering students due process protection. Susan, can you tell us a little bit about that report and some of its major findings?
Right. So we looked at the disciplinary policies and procedures at 53 top universities. We just grabbed the list off the U.S. News and World Report, and we looked for 10 specific procedural safeguards that we really feel like are essential for fair hearings on campus. And the easiest way to sum up our findings are really that most schools lacked most of these procedural safeguards. That wasn't a huge surprise to us, just based on what we had seen up to that point.
We're talking about some pretty basic safeguards, right?
Exactly. And some of what was surprising was even the most basic procedural safeguards were lacking at many, many schools. So even a presumption of innocence was not guaranteed at most schools. And that's, one of the most basic safeguards you can have. The other thing that really stuck out was how bad a lot of the policies were, just in terms of, there were a couple schools that had essentially no procedural safeguards at all, and many of them that had, maybe one or two of what we were looking for. The other thing that really stood out to me was that clarity is clearly not a priority for many of the administrators writing and implementing these policies. They weren't just bad, they were confusing, and they would be split up into different sections scattered across the website in ways that I honestly can't imagine trying to make any sense of if I were a student, especially in that sort of stressful situation.
Yeah. And, I want to emphasize again that this is not just an issue in sexual misconduct cases, where this has been in the news a lot in that context because of, the general public attention being paid to that. But we looked right at both sexual and non-sexual misconduct policies, and the findings on both were pretty poor, right?
Exactly. They were, between sexual harassment policies, sexual assault policies, and non-sexual misconduct policies, and also public and private schools, it really across the board, they were very bad. We did find that policies tended to be a little bit worse in the realm of sexual misconduct, but no school did great. Few schools did okay. Most were really just not acceptable with their policies.
So I guess the question is, where do we go from here? I mean, we are hard at work on a second report. We're going to keep following up on these policies and keep trying to draw public attention to it. But if we have someone out there watching, which I hope we do, who's suddenly outraged about this, what are some things? I mean, Susan, if you had to say, if you were going to advocate for one protection on campus, presumption of innocence, or a hearing, a simple hearing, as opposed to, just a single investigator hearing your case, or cross-examination, what would you say if somebody wanted to focus on kind of the most important issue? What do you think that would be?
It's hard to say what the most important issue is, but I think one change that would be extremely impactful would be to get rid of single investigator models. And that's because there are a number of problems that come just from that. So, for example, they don't include cross-examination, which is extremely important, but especially in these cases that just hinge on two people's point of view or two people's testimony. They also allow a huge risk of bias or conflict of interest. You don't have the normal, jury deliberation type situation where people can figure out, things they might have missed, errors in judgment they might be making. It is just one person who has so much control over a case. And so I think replacing a single investigator model with just, a normal hearing where there's different people playing different roles, I think that alone would improve things significantly at a lot of campuses.
And Kelsey, what do you think, of all of the things that the students really wanted on this survey, what seemed to be the most important to them?
So we were able to look at each protection, and they really supported both presumption of the largest majority of support went to being able to provide additional evidence at hearings, but students also wanted to be presumed innocent until found guilty. And they also really wanted to be allowed advisors. I think that those three things, they had the largest levels of support. I'm looking at the table right now of results.
And that additional evidence is one that's really important because this happens, a hearing is in process or a procedure is underway and, a witness comes forward. Students are sometimes reluctant to come forward. A witness comes forward or a student is able to get access to, to recovered emails or text messages that they didn't have before. And sometimes they're not allowed to introduce that or they're not, and that's a huge issue that we see. And a lot of schools don't allow that. So, I think we didn't touch on that quite yet, but that's another really important one. We know now that schools are not offering due process, that students want it. I think one big thing students need to do, and prospective students and their families, is read the handbooks and actually understand what schools provide before they go. Because, I get a lot of calls from families whose students are facing these kind of disciplinary charges. And what we hear is, how can they do this? People don't know. They assume that, they can't just kick you out without some sort of, reasonable procedure. They kind of assume that because it would be common sense. But that's not always what's offered. So my hope is that with all of this information that we're providing, that, students and their families and the public and alumni and trustees will really start to advocate for these things, because it really is, a significant issue that's affecting a lot of students, not just in sexual misconduct setting, but all across the board. And I hope that, with our continued work and with your good work on this survey, that we will be able to help bring public attention to it. Is there anything else you guys would like to add here?
I would just add that, if there are people out there who are interested in this issue and concerned about it, there's a lot of different things that you can do to help. If you're a student, obviously you can advocate for better policies. We also have a program at FIRE where we're helping students start their own student groups, where members of that group will help guide their fellow peers through the disciplinary process. And that has, in some cases, really helped students receive fair hearings. So if people are interested in that, they can check it out at studentdefenders.org. But FIRE is always willing to help in whatever way we can to try to improve policies on campus. Just feel free to reach out.
Thanks for joining us. And we will see you back here for the next installment of FIREside Chats.